And now, a segment from the Best of the Night Side with Barb DiGiulio podcast. Listen and download the latest podcast at newstalk1010.com.
Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that make me. Let's talk about sex.
The Night Side continues with Barb DiGiulio on Newstalk 1010.
All right, welcome back to the show. It is 8:07 on Monday, March 23rd, and thank you so much for being here with us. We're here till 10 o'clock tonight. Lots of great stuff coming up on the show. We're going to talk about random acts of kindness in the 9 o'clock hour after an employee for one airline pays for a flight for a Vancouver woman who was given the runaround by another airline. And we're going to ask whether or not you've given or received a random act of kindness. Right now, we are going to talk about a new book called The Sex Bible for People Over 50. The author is Dr. Laurie Betito. She is a clinical psychologist and sex and relationship expert, the host of Passion on Montreal's CJAD every night at 10, and the author, as we said, of The Sex Bible for People Over 50. Hi, Laurie. Thanks for joining me.
Wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's great. I know we've been looking forward to this for quite a while, so I do appreciate you being here. And we're going to talk about a number of things. But one of the things is this absolutely fabulous book that you've written.
Oh, thanks.
Well, I appreciate you sending me a copy. And I must say, I was surprised. It's actually like a coffee table book, but not for anyone who has kids probably under the
That's
age.
right. It's more like a bedside table book.
Maybe it's a bedside, but it's like this great hardcover. It's got very nice color photos. It's we were quite impressed and surprised when I saw the book.
Oh,
Yeah.
good. Well, there are no other books like it, especially for people over 50, where there are actual pictures. And most books that are written, the few books that are written for sexuality as we get older, are self-help. Lots of words, lots of pages, and guess what? Men aren't reading them.
Is there? Well, this one men will read.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
You got it.
Was that the point of the pictures?
Yes.
Isn't that a great idea? Oh, I have to ask you, who are your models?
Well, that's an interesting story, actually. The woman is she's an actress in California, and this was all taken care of by the publishing house, which is an American publishing house.
Okay.
And so she's an actress, and she invited this gentleman to be her partner on here. They were actually friends with benefits for many years, and so he's kind of an actor. He does other things too. I don't want to give away too much of his, because he has a whole other corporate life, actually.
Well, I mean, he kind of gives it away himself. He's in the book.
He's hoping, not. Maybe the people don't recognize it.
Oh,
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. But anyhow, so they got together, and so they're not acting. They're actually
They're sex partners.
They have been sex partners, and so that was kind of the chemistry was there for them.
Yeah, I would say that's for sure.
And they're slightly exhibitionistic, don't you think?
Well, yeah, but it works for the book.
Yes, it does.
And are they actually performing these acts?
Yes, they were. Well, I don't know. I wasn't there. I can't tell you for sure how much of it was.
Do all these photos get taken and then you get to go over which ones you want for the book?
Well, yes. We have an editor who puts the right pictures, who reads the book and then decides which pictures should go with the content, and then I get to veto if I think it's too much or not enough, or the picture's in the wrong place or what have you. They're quite explicit without being too explicit, right?
It's so unique, and that's a great way to put it, because as I first started flipping through the book, and my producer was there, and the technical guy was there, we're all kind of going, wow, look at this one, because they're very explicit photographs, and we all kind of giggle every time we look at them. But a great point, men will look at this book.
Right. It's explicit without showing genitals. Have you noticed?
I did notice that.
Right. So you don't even see any genitals, and yet that's the meaning of eroticism, right? It's kind of erotic. It's just enough to titillate, but not enough to be pornographic.
Okay, that's a great way to put it.
Right.
And you mentioned about the only book of its kind for people over 50. Is there a specific need based on that age group? Because what goes on that everybody who's over 50 then needs a sex guide?
Lots goes on. That's the thing. There is a need. And as a psychologist and as a sex therapist and someone who has seen a lot of people and heard from a lot of people, I can tell you there's a need because the questions I get asked are often like, this is happening to me, is this normal? Or people are panicking because suddenly they're not performing as they once were, and they're not sure what's going on. And when they realize it's an age-related thing, well, that just, the anxiety kind of goes down, says, okay, so what do I expect? What I wanted is for people to understand what they can expect as they get older. Not that everybody's going to go through every single thing that's in the book, but at least to know that there are changes. We change. We all have to face our aging, right? It's more difficult to get up off the ground if we sit on the ground. It's more difficult to recover when we fall. It's like these are natural changes. We may not like them, but we have to accept them.
Isn't it fair to say, though, say people who got married in their 20s, from their 20s to their 30s, they might want different things, from their 30s to their 40s. I mean, it's just one of those things that as people get older, as they mature, things may change for them. So what are some of the unique changes that they might notice as they get into their 50s?
Right. Well, some of the unique changes happen to be around their physical selves. So besides the fact that we get ailments like arthritis and back problems and all these other things as we get older, right? We get hurt more easily. So all of these things. But there are expectations of things that happen to our genitals and to our sexual self. So these are things that we need to expect. For example, men, and interestingly enough, men start to age at a much earlier point. So a man can start aging as of like 35, genitally speaking. He may notice changes as around that time. Doesn't mean he becomes non-functional. It just means he will notice, he will be able to say, I'm not like I was when I was 20. But that's normal, right? So some of the things that happen is it will take men longer to achieve, to get an erection. They will need more direct stimulation. So when they were younger, all they had to do was have a thought, right?
or the wind
or not,
blows.
or the wind blowing, exactly. Exactly. And so as a man reaches post 50, generally speaking, he needs a little more than the wind.
Okay.
Right? So, and he'll need more direct stimulation and more consistent stimulation. So that's something that both partners need to know as well. So erectile dysfunction can happen, although that's not a must for men. It only occurs in about a quarter of men that require medication. Otherwise, it just happens on and off for men throughout, and that's not the end of the world as long as they don't see it as the end of the world. Once they see it as the end of the world, then we get into anxiety and then it becomes overblown and has all kinds of damaging effects.
We're going to continue on our conversation with Dr. Laurie Betito. And if you have a question for Dr. Laurie, it's 416-872-1010, Star Talk, star 8255. Text us at 71010. The website is drlaurie.com. We've got her for the next hour. We're going to continue talking about the sex Bible for people over 50, but also cheating red flags that people say they overlooked. And if you want a happy sex life, you might want to try something called chore play. Welcome back to the Night Side. It's Barb DiGiulio. My guest this hour is Dr. Laurie Betito, clinical psychologist, sex and relationship expert. She's a host of Passion on Montreal's CJAD every night at 10 o'clock and the author of The Sex Bible for People Over 50. So one of your chapters is Easy Kama Sutra After 50. What is that? I don't even know what that is.
It's just a play on words. But it really is about adapting your positions to what ails you.
Okay.
So it's about positions. So finding, you can use props, and there's examples of that, examples of props, positions that you can use to alleviate your back problems, for example, or if a partner has knee problems, they can't go on their knees for too long. I mean, these are, we may not want to talk about them, but they are realities, right, as we age.
And I guess if you've got people who are stuck in ruts in terms of always doing the same thing time and time again, they may think, oh my goodness, I can't keep doing this, not realizing they could try something else that wouldn't hurt as much.
There you go. That's exactly what it is. I have heard too many times from people, oh, never mind, it hurts and I'll just give up anyway. I'm 60, I'm done, it's okay. What? You can go till you're 90. Forget about 60.
Do people have sex till they're 90?
Oh, yes. Oh,
what?
I have to tell you, Barb, something really funny. I've been going to seniors' residences to give talks in the last year, all right?
Okay.
The average age is somewhere around 84 years old. And I go there, and guess what I talk about? I talk about safe sex. Because there's a rise in sexually transmitted infections in that population. Think about it. You've got one guy, 10 women, okay? You don't think he's having fun? He's having fun. And this is what's going on. So I know this is happening. I've heard stories from the people who run the residences that tell me, I've heard stories from the kids of parents who are in these in these residences, seniors' homes, and they're still having sex. There's no reason not to. They still feel inside. We all feel inside like we're still young.
And still physically capable.
Well, there's no reason not to be. If you continue to use it, you should be able to keep it.
Keep it in practice. All right.
Yes.
We've got someone on the line who wants to talk to you. Bill is waiting patiently. Hey, Bill. Welcome to the Night Side with Dr. Laurie.
Hi, Bill.
Thanks. Hey, just so you know.
Yeah.
I'm 53,
Uh-huh.
and I get it every single day.
Ooh, Bill.
Wow. Good for you. You're keeping it healthy then.
I'm keeping it healthy. I've been physical all my life,
Yeah.
and wow, no problem there.
And you have a regular partner?
I do.
All right, great. And you're both on the same page, obviously.
Yep.
Okay.
So no change from your 40s to your 50s, your 30s to your 40s. It's still all working as it should.
Oh yeah.
Just the only thing I would say is it's not, all these changes don't happen all at once. So as long as you're aware that as you get older, you may see a change when you're 70, not even when you're 60, but maybe later on. And, so just don't panic when it happens. That's all. It's a question of, okay, we adapt now. This is something that's expected.
Billy, you sound like one of those guys who's going to be going into your 90s.
You know what? I probably will.
As he should.
Good for you. Good for
As
you.
he should.
And thanks for calling.
I might have those 10 partners.
Yeah, Bill. I can hear it.
I tell everybody, I said, if you want some action and you're single, get yourself into a home.
I might retire soon.
You'll have all the time in the world, Bill. Way to go. Thanks for your call.
Right.
Oh, congratulations. You got to love it, eh?
Yes.
Yeah, and it's an interesting point you make. So people, it won't happen and may not happen at the same time in the same decade for everybody. People don't have to worry that as soon as you turn 50, the plumbing's going to stop.
Right, at least the guys. But I have to say, Barb, for women, every woman goes through menopause. Every woman. And so every woman will experience some degree of vaginal dryness because what does menopause mean is a lack of estrogen, right? So all women will experience some degree of vaginal dryness. So that's something that needs to be taken care of. And it can be taken care of easily. That's the whole premise here, is that there are easy solutions. So don't give up.
We're talking about this as we should in a very lighthearted manner, but I'm sure for some people, the changes can be very distressing and for some couples. And so if people are noticing changes and they're noticing shifts in their sexual relationship that they're not happy with, at what point should couples seek the help of a sex therapist?
Well, when they can't seem to resolve the problem. Like this book, if first they read the book, that's only $20. Then they can seek and pay more.
Is it only $20?
That's all it is. It's $22
That's a good-looking $20 book.
That's right. So for $20, read that first, then call me, if the answer isn't there for you. Or it's more important, though, that we look at couples who have been struggling, not necessarily, or couples who don't know how to begin starting up again after they've been, say, inactive for a very long time. So those couples may need a bit more coaching behind them, which is, can be just motivating for them. And at least let's look at what are some of the issues. Sometimes there's resentment in there that needs to be cleared up before we can move forward,
Resentment. Interesting, because we've talked about it before, how it's a lot of the emotional stuff sometimes getting in the way of a sexual relationship, a healthy one.
Often that. When I see couples who come in to see me with a sexual problem, more often than not, it is a symptom of something else. So my job is to dig a little further and see what is this symptomatic of. And I find often a lot of resentment and anger and a long history, like accumulation of stuff that really needs to be addressed.
Do women ever withhold sex in a controlling or power-tripping manner?
I have a hard time with that because women do control the sex in many ways. That's a fact. If she doesn't want to, it's not going to happen. All right?
And he always wants to?
Well,
or most always?
No, because I see the reverse too. I do see the reverse where she wants to and he doesn't. So it's not always this way. But let's say for 3/4 of women, it works that way. But it's not that she withholds it as a punishment. She doesn't want to have sex with him. She's feeling so much resentment that she can't have sex with him.
Oh, she's just not attractive.
That's right.
Okay.
She is not attracted to him at that moment. And this is where we can start talking about the chore play. But a woman who's resentful of her partner because he's been mean to her or because she feels lonely or she feels like she's not getting her needs met, will not want to have sex with him. So okay, she's not purposely withholding something she wants with him.
I got it.
She doesn't want it with him. So imagine the hardest thing that I have said to people is I will assess her interest in sex, because he'll often send her saying, well, my wife's not interested in sex. And then I do an evaluation and find out she's perfectly interested, just not in sex with him. And he has a hard time hearing that. But that's the truth. And so now we have to look at, all right, how do we make her interested in you?
Our conversation will continue. It's fascinating. Dr. Laurie Betito is here. She's a clinical psychologist, sex and relationship expert. She's the author of The Sex Bible for People Over 50 and the host of Passion on Montreal's CJAD. Every night at 10, we've got her here tonight. She's doing a special pre-show version with us here on the Night Side.
When I get that feeling, I want sexual healing, sexual healing.
Where variety and life itself come to converse and copulate. The Night Side on Newstalk 1010.
Welcome back to the show. It's 8:35. I'm Barb DiGiulio. My guest is Dr. Laurie Betito, clinical psychologist, sex and relationship expert. She's the host of Passion on Montreal's CJAD every night at 10 o'clock. And Dr. Laurie, just a couple more points before we move on.
Sure.
Your book is The Sex Bible for People Over 50. I've got a couple text messages asking whether or not you address same-sex couples, two men together 17 years, just over the age of 50. And they're tuning in and wanting to know, I guess, whether you address same-sex couples or whether or not a lot of the stuff applies to same-sex couples.
What a great question, and I wish the book was in fact way more inclusive, but it's not. It is addressed to heterosexual couples because that's what you see there. However, the chapters are for men are just good for all men, whether they are straight or gay, doesn't matter. In my practice, I work a lot with gay couples as well, so they have problems just like straight couples do, so we certainly address that. But the book doesn't. There's a series of these, one of which is, there's one called The Sex Bible for Lesbian Lovers, but there isn't one yet for gay men. Right. Needs to be written.
It needs to be written, but you do have, for instance, there are chapters just devoted to men, and that would apply. And a lot of the other stuff would apply. It's not gender specific. It's just talking about other things that you can introduce into the relationship, right?
Right. But it is, I mean, let's be honest, this is more gender. This is very heterosexist as a book, and it also only features one couple, so, it doesn't have the variety of it's not representative of the entire population.
People do need to check out the photographs in this book, though. Because you're right.
Sure, if you're straight and you find this erotic, perfect.
I just find it so interesting. And you mentioned it. It is erotic without really showing too much.
Right.
And the other point you made, too, in case people weren't listening, I asked you who the models were. And you said it's an actress and then a man she was sort of friends with benefits with. But you can see this chemistry between them.
Yes.
So it makes perfect sense.
Exactly. They definitely have that chemistry. So I don't think much of it was acted.
No, it doesn't look like it. Okay. Or they practiced a lot. Someone else said, I'm 51, girlfriend is 43. I'm going as strong now as when I was a teen. I plan to be shot dead at 99 by a jealous husband. As from Todd.
That's cute.
Things are going very well for him. All right.
Often we hear from people where things are going really well. The people where things are not going so well are less likely to talk about it with their friends. So sometimes we get the impression that everybody else is doing it and we're not, when in fact that's not the case.
Everybody, I'm sure, at some point or another runs into issues.
Of course, yes. It depends. Maybe you'll run into issues at 80, and good for you if that's the case.
Someone via the text board says Madonna wants a date with Drake. She only wants a kiss from him. What is it with the older woman, younger man scenario?
Well, what is it with an older woman still finding a younger person hot or attractive? There's nothing wrong with it. It's kind of built in. Youth and vitality, and it's all tied into youth, right? So it doesn't matter how old we get, we still find what's youthful attractive. It's almost hardwired into us. It doesn't mean we're not attracted to our own age mates, because couples can still have very vibrant sex lives and feel very much attracted to each other, even if they're gray and sagging and whatever else is happening to their bodies. It's not attraction goes way beyond that. We're talking eye candy here.
Is it the same dynamic when you're talking about older woman, younger man, and older man, younger woman?
I'm not sure that's the same dynamic. I think what motivates a younger man to be with an older woman is different than what would motivate an older man to be with a younger woman. But I read a study that was very interesting that looked at just the biology, just the evolutionary part of it all, that says that age 16 seems to be the most attractive age. In other words, we are attracted to people at that age, which almost, like, you hear it, you go, ick, right?
Yeah.
It almost feels pedophilic or hebephilic, but it's almost like wired, because at some point way back, that was the age of procreation, right? 16 years old around that time. So sometimes I wonder how much is evolution, how much is biology, how much is our culture. There's so many factors that come into play here.
Is there ever a situation where a relationship involving people at very different ages can be unhealthy, just based on the age situation or the maturity level?
Well, it's a maturity level. Listen, what two people choose to do, whether we find it creepy or not, if they are, mature, meaning they're adults, they're not, nobody is underage.
Yes.
If they are consenting adults and really consenting, nobody is submitting to anything, which is not the same as consent. But if they're consenting adults, they may be motivated by different things. So you may have a very young person motivated by, say, money, right? Mm-hmm. And okay, if that is her choice or his choice, what do we mean by healthy then? What are we talking about?
So, yeah, well, I guess your point is if they're both into it and they're both happy with it, and I mean, say the younger person is motivated by money. If the older person knows that and is comfortable with it, then I guess it's fine. If the older person thinks they're sexually attracted to them and they're not, that probably is not fine.
That's right, because then it's a deception. So there's something, is this ethical or not ethical? That depends on how you're approaching it. But if everybody's on board, and in this situation, he knows that she's there because of whatever it is. It's almost like those websites seeking arrangements. Have you seen those? There's
Only doing research.
Yeah, well, of course. But the seekingarrangements.com, this is what it is. Young students, university students seeking sugar daddies.
Or sugar,
basically.
are there
or
anything?
sugar mamas,
Yeah.
So, and so there's an exchange of something, right?
Yeah, and I guess, and that's the thing. As long as both parties are being upfront and honest and they're comfortable with it, who's to say there's anything wrong with it?
I mean, we all naturally judge, unfortunately, based on whatever it is. But who are we to judge, really?
416-872-1010 if you have questions for Dr. Laurie Betito. Her website is drlaurie.com. She's a clinical psychologist and a sex and relationship expert. She hosts Passion on Montreal CJAD every night at 10. How long have you been doing the show?
We've almost hit our 16th year.
Oh, that's amazing.
I know.
You know,
it's been a long time.
One of the things I wanted to talk to you about, you do a lot of monthly segments on certain things, and you do one about teen talk.
Yes, I do a teen sexuality. So for the last 10 years or so, once a month, we just focus on teen sexuality. What I'd noticed is that a lot of teenagers were emailing and texting during the show. So I said, we need to address their needs, and parents were asking all kinds of questions. So I bring on a panel of sex educators and teachers and nurses and teenagers who I get from the community, and we have a roundtable discussion about all kinds of topics that come up, be it consent or safe sex or anything that comes up with regarding teen sexuality.
What are some of the main concerns that you've found among teens when it comes to sexuality?
Not enough education. Many of the teens,
interesting.
Right, and this is in Quebec as well. So, many are complaining that they don't know enough, that they want more, that they don't have too many people to talk to. They have a lot of questions about what is normal, many concerns about consent as well, and cyberbullying and sexting and all of these issues. So all of these things come up, and it's just so fascinating to get that perspective, and gets us to see how things have changed as well.
I find it so interesting because I think there are a lot of parents out there who are hoping if they just don't talk about it, it won't be happening.
Yeah, fat chance of that. In fact, the research tells you quite the opposite, that if the more you talk about it, the more kids talk to their parents and they get sex education, the less likely they are to engage in early sex.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. We need to take another break, and then let's go over some of the cheating red flags that people say they overlooked when they later found out what was going on. Welcome back to the Night Side. It's Barb DiGiulio, and my guest is Dr. Laurie Betito. She's a host of Passion on Montreal CJAD every night at 10 o'clock. Clinical psychologist, sex and relationship expert. Dr. Laurie, great text question that came in.
Sure.
I have a question for the good doctor. My girlfriend and I, two women, my girlfriend and I are in our 40s and are single and find that young guys, late 20s, early 30s, hit on us when we go out. It's very flattering, but what is really going on? Is it because they know if we say yes, we won't be chasing them for a relationship? I just find it fascinating that they want to get with us when there are younger, more firm women around.
Except that younger men will tell you, who are attracted to the older, they call them MILFs, the older women, is that they love the idea of experience, right? They find that older women have experience, are more free with their own sexuality, are more connected to themselves. So there's something about the older woman and her confidence that intrigues the younger guy.
Is there something about the older women, and as I see in this text, that there's sort of this disbelief as to, well, why would they be interested in us? Them not even realizing how attractive it is to the younger people.
Right. Well, it is confusing. So, sometimes we don't believe it ourselves, but there is an attraction, and not everybody, but you have a segment of the population that this is. It goes beyond the looks. It goes beyond the sagginess. That's the reality. Attraction is not just about what you just that one image that you see, like in Tinder, swipe left, swipe right. It's not that simple. So if you look at the depth of somebody, then you can be attracted to that depth.
So, yeah, it does. I guess it doesn't have to make sense on the surface.
That's right. And
Okay.
it doesn't. For a lot of people, you say, ooh, what's that person doing with that person, right? You hear that. Oh, look at that old guy with that young, like, what does she see in him? But sometimes it goes so far beyond that.
416-872-1010, Star Talk, star 8255 if you have questions for Dr. Laurie Betito. Cheating red flags people say they overlooked. We'll go through as many of them as we can. You're no longer having sex.
Right. Well, in this one, that's not. We have to be very careful that not each of these things taken individually is an indicator of infidelity.
It just can be.
It can be, but it's a you have to look at an entire picture. So
Okay.
if you're no longer having sex, plus you're finding he needs a lot of privacy all of a sudden, or there's drastic changes in his behavior, you add it all up. It should add up to that, and often people just don't want to see it. They don't want to look, and it's only when they discover it accidentally they realize, there were signs.
Right. So are people ignoring those red flags? I've had friends who have been in relationships and I see the red flags, but they don't want to see them. And then at the end they go, oh yeah. But it's like they had the blinders on because they wanted so desperately for that situation to work.
That's right. Sometimes that's it. They know, but they don't want to know, so they don't want to be told, which is often a little tricky for the friend who knows, right? Let's say a friend has some idea. You have to be kind of careful, because once you spill the beans to your friend, that friend may not want to know, because now that they know, they have to do something about it. Maybe they weren't ready to do something about it.
Sure.
Right.
And we acknowledge that these are not definite signs that somebody is cheating on you, but there are some really interesting ones here, like physical fitness becoming more of a priority than ever. Is that the person trying to get in great shape all of a sudden?
Yes.
For somebody else?
That's right. Spending an awful lot of time at the gym suddenly has to impress a little bit more, right? One of the ones, though, that I find one of the biggest red flags is when your partner suddenly, their cell phone is completely attached to them. They take their phone into the shower, into the bathroom, on their bedside. They never leave their phone, and you are not allowed anywhere near your partner's phone. That's a big red flag. Everything's done these days through the cell, right?
Yeah.
So emails and text messages, and in the last few years, all the discoveries that I've been told about have been either mostly through email and through text messages.
When confronted, cheaters have major outbursts.
Oh yes, it's that defensiveness, right? If I accuse you of something, you go into a big tirade about how could you think that of me, and how is that possible? And so now it's suddenly you're blaming the other person, because how dare they think that, and how come they're not trusting? And so they kind of go off the edge there.
Okay, and a couple of other things. And again, this doesn't mean somebody's cheating, but see, these are some of the red flags that people say they overlooked and then later found out the person was cheating. This one's interesting. Accusations are made by the cheater.
Often what you'll find is somebody who's accusing their partner of cheating when they're doing it because they actually believe, maybe since I'm capable of doing it, they're capable of doing it, right? So sometimes that's what we see. And other times it's to deflect. It's like, let me put the onus on you. Let me look like I don't trust you. And then therefore I'm putting you in a position where you have to defend yourself, and then you're not coming and attacking me.
We were talking about this a little bit earlier in terms of couples that come to see you, whether or not they're having issues and not having sex anymore. And you said that's a symptom of something else going on. So if there are people out there listening and having any issues in their relationships, sexually or otherwise, do you think that, or do you know that if couples come to you and one or the other or both think that it's too far gone, they can never get back what they once had, is that always the case, or can they?
They absolutely can, and it's not about, though, getting back what they once had. I think far too often we have this expectation that we want to go back to the beginning, and you can never go back to a beginning. Just like you can't regain your virginity, it just doesn't happen. You can't, but it doesn't mean you can't grow in your relationship and have a good relationship. But if your expectation is to feel the same level of passion or chemistry you had in the first couple of years, then your expectations are you will be disappointed. So you have to, first we have to make those expectations realistic and work with that.
And if there are people who go elsewhere to find that excitement, that same level of passion, does it never last?
That's right.
It doesn't last. It's like anything else.
It's like anything else. It's like any shiny new thing you get. Eventually, that shiny new thing's no longer shiny and new. Not that I just want to reduce it to that level, but for the most part, even science has looked at this, that the beginnings of a relationship, that whole in love feeling, only lasts up until about 18 months.
When you start doing their laundry.
Exactly. And all the other stuff that comes along with it, right? And all the other little aggravations that bring up, but those are normal things.
Of course, those are relationship things.
Exactly. We all have to adapt. Nothing is perfect. Everybody puts their best foot forward in the beginning.
We've got a text question from Mike. He wants to know if cheating is the number one issue for separation.
You'd be surprised, but cheating is not the number one issue for separation. It's a big one, but not every couple separates after infidelity. In fact, only about half, I would say, end up splitting up. I think I treat more couples that stay together than that split up. But of course, it requires you to commit to something, right? And if you, getting help obviously is the first step. You can't do it without it, I believe. Like, it would be very difficult to overcome that level of betrayal without getting the help. But it isn't, you can absolutely heal from infidelity. It just requires certain elements like absolute responsibility on the person's part, the cheater, but also responsibility on the cheated on spouse to be able to say, okay, what was my contribution to the breakdown of this marriage? It also requires a certain level of repentance, if you will, or make up for some of these behaviors. It requires a lot of consciousness with this and a lot of transparency, especially transparency. If there isn't any transparency, you can't rebuild the trust.
Now, what about on the part of the partner who's been cheated on? At some point, do they have to find a way to move past it and not have it something that they keep throwing in the other person's face?
Absolutely. They absolutely have to learn to let that go. At some point, once the conditions have been met, it's a little bit like putting somebody on trial, then they get their sentence, then they go on probation. But once the probation period is over, they're free to go.
Right, right.
So at some point, your partner cannot be forever in that probationary mode. At some point, you have to be able to let go and say, all right, now I'm willing to trust again. But one thing that happens again, if it were to happen again, then they go right back to the slabber and they bypass everything else.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, can we keep you around a little bit longer?
Sure.
We've got so much more stuff to go over with you. This is so interesting, and thank you for being here. Dr. Laurie Betito is my guest, clinical psychologist, sex and relationship expert. She hosts Passion on Montreal CJAD every night at 10 o'clock.
You're listening to The Night Side, hosted by Barb DiGiulio on Newstalk 1010.
Welcome back to the show. Thank you for being here. It is 9:07 on Monday, March 23rd. We're here till 10 o'clock. And so thrilled to have Dr. Laurie Betito stick around for a few more minutes. She's a clinical psychologist, sex and relationship expert. She hosts a nightly show on Montreal CJAD. It's called Passion, and it's every night at 10 o'clock, and the website is drlaurie.com. Thanks for sticking around. Promise we won't keep you too long. I know you have a show to do tonight.
Yeah, I can stay till 9:30. I'm good as long as you want me.
Thank you so much. So someone that texted in the question about cheating and whether or not it's the number one issue for separation, you said, funnily enough, it is not. But I don't think we talked about what the top issues are when people get separated.
Well, often we're talking about there's money issues, sex issues. These are the big killers of relationships, really, and accumulation of that. So, for example, a couple that for years is struggling with their sexuality, for years the frustration of lack of libido or a difference in drives, and they're not addressing it, it only builds that resentment. So sexuality, sex is a big killer of it, and can ruin relationships, as can money issues and stress, right? So sex, money, kids, in-laws, that's all part of it. And infidelity is often a symptom of a lot of these things.
Oh, interesting.
Right.
And how does communication or lack thereof work into that?
Well, if you're not feeling heard, often I'll hear partners who say that they are lonely in their relationship. They don't feel like their partner really cares. They lack the compassion, empathy, kindness from their partners. And that's really tough when you're lonely inside your relationship and your relationship is not getting the attention that it needs in order to thrive. You get people who are very hurt. And that hurt, if it cannot be translated into words that are heard by the other person, well, then they just get carried on and they just build into little balls of resentment, which eventually turn into contempt for your partner. And once you reach that contempt phase, you're in serious trouble.
Let me put out the phone numbers if people have. I have so many questions for you. I'm not even going to let the listeners in. 416-872-1010, Star Talk, star 8255. Text us at 71010 if you want to talk to Dr. Laurie Betito. But I would think, when you're describing that, I would think that people must come to you at a certain point, and things could have been building for 10 years, 15 years.
Yes. It's so interesting you say that, Barb, because your average couple, believe it or not, will wait around 6 years before they get help.
Wow.
6 years. I had a couple come into my office. This woman came into my office. She pulled out a business card I hadn't used in years, all crumpled up. She'd had it in her wallet for 7 years until she finally used it.
It's amazing how many years go by, how much time goes by when life sort of gets in the way.
That's right. It does. It just flies by, and especially when you're dealing with so many things like work and kids, and those first 10 years of marriage or relationships are really difficult when you think about it. You're at the height of your career. There's lots of busyness happening. You're starting, your family is growing. You don't breathe for 2 seconds. And if you don't learn to take care of yourself and the relationship, well, something is going to die out.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Not only marriage, but when the kids come along, you never take time for yourself. You never put yourself first until they're probably into their teens.
That's
That's
ever. Right. And women, I hear them say, what about me? Who takes care of me? And unfortunately, if you don't take care of you, nobody else will.
I have a caller on the line, and I cannot wait to hear his story. Bob, you're on with Dr. Laurie Betito. Go ahead and tell us your story. I love it.
Hi, Bob.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
My name is Bob, and like I said, I'm 56 years old. I'm seeing a lady. She's in her 80s, and the family disagrees with it. They think I'm a money grabber or I'm a safe cracker. Mm-hmm. And that's not the point at all. The point is we enjoy our old country and Western music. We enjoy dancing. I enjoy going out for dinner with her. We have a good social life. There's no sex life involved. I refuse that. I won't get into that one.
Why not? Why not? Why not? Can I ask you why not?
Why not? I just I'm not going to bed with my mother, okay?
So then it's a platonic friendship. There's no romantic stuff here. It's not a romance.
There's a lot of romance going down, and like there's flowers and there's hugging and there's kissing and there's a lot of bondage there together.
You mean bonding or bondage? Bonding or bondage? There's a difference. Bonding, okay.
But
just checking.
There's a lot of stuff going down, but the family disagrees with it because the family feels I'm too young, and I'm 56, and she's in her 80s, but we get along fine. We get along like we're two little 7-year-olds.
Yeah, it sounds like you're friends to me.
There's no harm with this.
Listen,
I sleep on the couch. She sleeps in her bed.
Okay, so
and I'm more of a body protector than anything. But she wants sexual activity, and I won't go there. I can't put myself there. I don't have that drive. And she wants sexual activity, and I just can't see it going down. But we drink together, we eat together, we go out and dance together. We have a great time, and it's not like being with my mother. It's like being with somebody my own age. I communicate better with her than I do my own age.
Okay, Bob, thanks a lot for the call.
Right.
Dr. Laurie, take it away.
Where do I go with
You're
this?
The expert.
Where do I go with this? Obviously, for him, it's platonic. For her, it's not.
Then that doesn't sound like a healthy relationship.
Right. There's an imbalance. There's a power imbalance there, and he holds the control there because she's she's getting something. They're each getting something, but there's something she's not getting. And is he making her feel like this is a romantic relationship, but you're not getting this part of it, and yet this is something she would want, and he's puts the limit to like what he said is a bit I don't want to be having sex with my mother. I
was going to say the same thing to you.
That was a little disturbing to me. Then why? Then make sure that's very clear to her that to me, you're just like my relative, you're my good friend, but I have no romantic interest in you.
Because otherwise, if you don't want to have sex with your mother, then you don't want to have a relationship with your mother either.
Well, you can be friends with your mother, you can hang out with your mother, but don't lead her on to think that you want more than what you're actually prepared to give her.
And if okay. It sounds like there's a lot of an imbalance.
To me, there is,
Yeah, okay. We're going to continue on with Dr. Laurie Betito next, and I promise we're going to get right to it. We're going to talk about chore play. People are asking me on the text board, what is that? Dr. Laurie Betito, clinical psychologist, sex and relationship expert. She hosts a show called Passion on CJAD in Montreal every night at 10 o'clock. The website is drlaurie.com. It's 9:15. Time for News Talk 1010 Time Saver Traffic.
Well, some great news. Westbound on the 401 Express passed the 404 after several hours of being closed. We had that crash blocking all the lanes with that rollover tractor trailer. All express traffic, now it's open. All lanes open there. So those delays, they're pretty much dissipated by this point anyway, but all lanes are open over the last few minutes. Niagara bound on the QEW at Appleby line, we have construction taking up the HOV lane as you're making your way through Burlington. And we had an earlier collision on Sherway Gardens Road at the Queensway in Etobicoke. That's now been cleared away. For one small town, death is not the end, based on the International Emmy Award-winning hit series The Returned, Mondays at 10 on A&E. With Time Saver Traffic, I'm Jody Thornton. Listen live anytime online at newstalk1010.com.
Just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy.
Welcome back to the night side. It's 9:16. Barb DiGiulio. And I obviously have a background in sports. When they played the song, I asked the guys, is this Shawn Michaels from the WWE? That was a song he always came out to. Dr. Laurie Betito is my guest, clinical psychologist, sex and relationship expert. And we were promising we were going to get to this. So there is an ongoing installment in the New York Times called Women at Work, and it talks about relationships and the way to a happy marriage. And a recent edition talks about trying chore play if you want a happy sex life. Dr. Laurie, go ahead.
Chore play. In the Urban Dictionary, it's a new word, right? It's when a woman is turned on by the sight of her partner, her husband, boyfriend, whatever, doing regular household chores that she would normally be doing.
They call that porn for women, right?
That's exact. Have you seen that book? There's a wonderful little book called Porn for Women. Every page has a guy doing something, whether it's changing a diaper or cleaning a toilet or vacuuming. It's fantastic.
That's great. Okay, go ahead.
There's a reality. That is a reality. For women, it is not, foreplay doesn't start just in the bedroom. And that's very clear. Especially women in long-term relationships. We just finished talking about, right, the speed of life. Life gets crazy. And if she feels like she has to do more of, or lots of stuff around the house and she feels an imbalance, then she's exhausted, she grows to be resentful, and that doesn't warm up her heart. Earlier in the program, we talked about women needing that warmth in their heart in order to feel like they want to get intimate, that they want to do that. And really, when women see their partner do things that just out of the kindness, just because, right? Not because they want to get any, but just because they don't want you to work so hard. They want to alleviate the stress. They want to do their share. They don't even question it. Well, that warms her heart.
That is so, you know what, that is so bang on. And I think that, I hope guys realize that it's not even one of those where it takes very little to make women happy. It's knowing what they need to feel supported.
That's right. That's exactly what is it that you need. And men sometimes don't get it because that's not what they need, right? Like, you know, for men, for the majority, again, we're generalizing here, but for men, they could put everything aside to have sex. It's okay if the house is dirty, and it's okay if there's dishes and laundry piling up. If it means they can have sex, they'll put that away. They won't think about it. But ask a woman to not think about all those things, right? She'll often, like, you know, he'll say, okay, honey, let's get to it. And she's like, no, I can't. I got to make the lunches, and I still have 3 loads of laundry, and I've got to, you know, and then she can't relax.
Yeah.
She can't focus on her pleasure, and don't you want her to feel that pleasure? So instead, try something like, you know what, let's get this done together. You know, let's do this, and then just go and do everything, and then I'll just run you a bath, and if you need a massage, I'll give you a massage, without expecting that it's going to lead necessarily to sex.
Talk about this all the time. I know it bothers people sometimes, but I think the sooner that we at least acknowledge men and women are very different creatures, we can start to address some of these differences in order to make healthier relationships.
Exactly. And so much of my work, Barb, it has to do with that. So much has to do with translation, you know, trying to get one gender to understand the other gender.
She says this, it means this.
That's exactly it.
And I read something on the weekend, and this makes a lot of sense to me too, that a lot of women would be way more into sex if they could get 1 hour more sleep a night.
Oh, right. Sleep is way more important. And you ask any partner who has a snoring partner beside them and ask them how angry they feel at the end of the week, or how irritable they feel because they're not getting sleep. Sleep is an absolute necessity for us to feel not just rested, but psychologically good and raring to go. If we're exhausted, that's the one thing we're not going to do is generally have sex.
We've got you just for a couple more minutes. Let's talk about the interesting facts about pornography that will blow more than just your mind. So these are really surprising things, I guess, about pornography. And MILF is the most frequently searched porn term on the internet. Hello?
Yeah, we're not going to say that out loud, though, that stands for,
I think most people know, right?
Exactly. Well, we talked about that too, right? Now, but if you look at, when those are Googled, you're talking about 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds. The 40 and 50-year-olds of today, the 60-year-olds of today, they're hot. They take care of themselves. They look good. There's, you know, it's a bit of a different time, and that's very youthful still today.
Oh, we've got Al on the line. I think he's got a comment or question. Hey, Al, go ahead. You're on the night side.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
I happened to come across this pastor on YouTube, and he was talking about men and women and how they're different. And I guess he's also a relationship expert of some sort. I don't know quite what he does, but he was just talking about men and how they have compartments in their head, you know, and women are all wired and all interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
And that being a big difference. And as a result, you know, each one has to approach their relationship slightly differently. And I just didn't know if you had a comment on that. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's just, you know, that's why men can actually not worry about the laundry if it's sitting there.
They put it in a drawer and ignore it for a while.
That's right, yeah.
Yes, so, you're absolutely right.
Would you agree with that, yeah?
Yes, I agree with that, and also that women are more detailed focused. So they have a lot more detail swimming around in their heads than men do. Men are able to exactly do that, compartmentalize way better than we do. And we could learn a thing or two from men in that respect.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing I was just going to say is I think a lot of men, you know how we get in a relationship and people say, you know what, don't try and change me. I think for a lot of men, they fail to recognize that if you go into a relationship and 10 years later you're exactly the same person you were 10 years ago, then you've somehow failed yourself. And that change is actually a good thing.
That's an interesting.
Thanks for the call,
Interesting
Al.
point. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't really heard that from a man before, but that is, well, I mean, I think it goes too with what we were talking about earlier. In your 20s, from your 20s to your 30s, you've got to change and grow a little. Just, mature. Same from your 30s to your 40s. But I think that there is something to that. Men and women are wired differently.
We are. We're wired differently. We absorb information sometimes differently. We see things from a different perspective. And if we don't understand our partner's perspective, then we can get into a lot of trouble. One of the areas, I don't know if we still have a bit of time, but that's in terms of sexual desire and libido. Men think that women should feel the way they do. They have more spontaneous libidos or desire, so it's triggered by many different things. Whereas women are much more reactive in their libido, so they don't necessarily have that spontaneous feeling of being horny, for lack of better words, whereas most men anyway have that, and most women don't have that. They lose that spontaneous desire over time in relationships. It doesn't mean that they're not interested. It just means that they need triggers and they need conditions to be right for them to be open to engaging. But once they engage, they're fully in it. They want to, they're enjoying it, and they get pleasure.
And the full instructions are in your book.
Yes.
Yes. The Sex Bible for people over 50. I think some of those things apply to people of all ages.
It does. Definitely applies to people of all ages.
Thank you so much for this. I hope we can do it again soon.
I certainly hope so. I've had a great time. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Dr. Laurie Betito, clinical psychologist, sex and relationship expert. She has to run because she has a show to host at 10 o'clock tonight. It's called Passion on Montreal CJAD, and she's the author of the Sex Bible for people over 50.
You've been listening to a segment from the Best of the Night Side with Barb DiGiulio podcast. Log on, listen, and download the latest podcast right now by visiting newstalk1010.com.